Educating society about the first years of life, the secondary curriculum. Felicity Gillespie of Kindred Squares gave this talk to an invited audience at a Foundation Years Information Research meeting on the 20th of April, 2021. Felicity is currently director of Kindred Squares. She's been an advisor to public and private sector organizations for over 20 years, working with lobby groups, FTSE 100 businesses, ministers and officials across Labour, Coalition and Conservative administrations. Previously, Felicity was the founding executive director of the Broadcast Training and Skills Regulator and the National Teaching Awards. A former associate of the Prime Minister's Delivery Unit and of the National College of School Leadership, Felicity has served as a national judge of the UK National Training Awards and speaks globally on the British education system.
Kindred Squares, a foundation established to raise public awareness of the early years and specifically the link between what happens in the early years and the impact on later life, as Aida was referring to. We don't fund programs that seek to solve the problems of quality or quantity of support available in the early years. We try to fund research and initiatives to raise the understanding of the problem and the development of what we call the burning platform, which we hope will create sufficient heat to start to move the dial of public discourse and consequently politicians' focus and perhaps even funding away from late intervention towards early prevention. I spent 20 years as an advisor to government in the school sector. So when I was approached by a philanthropist to set up a foundation to support an issue in education, what issue should that be? I didn't actually pause for breath. I just said early years because, as Aida has said, and as you all know, the older children, we could just achieve our North Star, which is a level playing field at 4. I think an awful lot of people in the Department for Education and in intervention programs in schools would be out of a job, which would be marvellous. So with that in mind, we funded lots of different things. We funded a cross-party commission run by the CSJ and the Fabians, which we're hoping will establish some kind of cross-party consensus around the priorities. We've funded lots of research by YouGov around parental expectations. We've obviously worked with the Royal Foundation. And the programme I'm going to just talk very briefly about is one that's underway at the moment, which is a year's programme with the Oxford University team and Anna Winter, looking at the development and piloting of curriculum materials for Key Stage 3 science. We had a lot of discussions about whether we should be going Key Stage 3, Key Stage 4, whether it should be science or PSHE, and we can talk about that later if you want to, but what we're doing at the moment is testing some materials that have been developed for Key Stage 3 science. And the purpose is to embed an understanding of the key principles of early child development in the curriculum, and that this universal teaching will provide students with an understanding of the key components and processes of children's early development and the critical interaction between a child and their environment. Ultimately, this will inform students' subsequent parenting and thereby improve long-term outcomes for future generations. That's the hope anyway. Lofty, isn't it? And in order to get the curriculum materials right, we felt it was important not just to think about the content, but to also think about how it would be applied in schools and the kind of nuts and bolts of delivery, because that's always, from experience, where a lot of initiatives sort of come unstuck. It looks good on paper, but when you get it into a school, it doesn't work quite as you think it's going to. So we have 2 brilliant expert groups that have led the work. The first is an academic expert advisory group, which is focusing very much on the content. And then the second is an educational expert advisory group, which are from leading academy trusts and schools and educational groups, AQA and so on, who are focusing on the delivery side of things. We are running it as a pre-pilot and then as a full pilot. And then the university team will be writing it up over the summer. So we should have results, I think, by September or October of this year. And there's 12 key areas that the curriculum lessons will be covering. I might just run through them because I think it's kind of critical to understanding which element of early development we're really focusing on. So they are as follows. The brain is made up of billions of interconnected neurons. Genetics and environment both have a role to play in brain development. New experiences can lead to new neural circuits being formed. Circuits can be strengthened and weakened by individual experiences. The ability of the brain to change throughout a person's life is called neuroplasticity. The brain is particularly plastic and therefore sensitive to experiences in the early years and adolescence. Essential neural pathways are developed in the uterus and throughout the early years. Babies are able to perceive and discriminate environmental stimuli in the uterus and throughout the early years. Caregivers can improve long-term health outcomes by supporting brain development in the early years through, and then all the things you do. The early years period is a foundation for long-term physical and mental health. What happens in the early years is not deterministic. Resilience is dependent on supportive relationships and developing skills. So those are the 12 key sort of principles that are covered in 3 separate lesson plans. And alongside the curriculum materials, there have been films developed. There's teacher training unit and a whole bunch of surveys and other evaluation mechanisms for the schools to use. The teacher training includes the core content summary, the project description and rationale, the overview of the lessons and all the resources, lesson plans, keyword lists, information about safeguarding, because obviously this can be quite an issue, cross-curricular links, because I think for us, Key Stage 3 is never going to be the full answer, because as more and more schools are moving towards a 3-year Key Stage 4, away from the bigger Key Stage 3, increasingly, if you're not on the curriculum of Key Stage 4, it's less likely that it will be picked up in Key Stage 3. And so we are looking very much to make those links cross-curricular, but also between Key Stage 3 and Key Stage 4 to get that sense of progression. Also included are lesson PowerPoints, worksheets for foundation, higher and extension activities, electronic links to all the research questionnaires and pre-recorded lessons, and accompanying student packs for delivery without a teacher. So if there's a school that wasn't going to be doing it, but then a teacher was off sick, they can sort of just pull it off the shelf and there it is. So we've started with a tiny, tiny little pre-pilot with just about 300 children, just to establish whether we're, pitching it at the right level, whether it works, whether it's interesting. And we've just completed that and got the findings back from that. That's being rewritten. Some of the materials, sorry, being rewritten and tweaked. And then the full pilot is going to be starting this term. What can I say about the pre-pilot? It's been incredibly successful in terms of engagement. We have been very surprised that actually the children have said it's been really positive, and I think I haven't got a percentage, sorry, but they're very, very much of the view that this should be taught in the school curriculum. They all see the point of it. There's quite a lot of sort of wow factor of, gosh, I didn't know that. There's an idea of the understanding the brilliance of the brain, which I think that was an expression that one of the children came up with. This is a lesson about the brilliance of my brain, and I think that's come through the study that's been done on the pre-pilot very strongly. 9 out of 10 of the teachers who actually delivered the lessons also think it should be part of the core curriculum. I think there's an issue about how we discuss it with government as opposed to with academy trusts, because obviously with more than 70% of secondary schools now running as academies, I'm not sure that going through the government to the mainstream national curriculum is necessarily going to be the most effective way of rolling it out, but we'll have that discussion after the full pilot has been completed. I wasn't really going to say much more, because I think, I mean, there's so much one could say about it that I think probably it's better to wait for questions. But that's what we're doing. There is a website which I'll send. I think Nick, I don't know if Nick's got it or not, but we can send you the link so you can see all the materials and everything there is to see about the way the study's being developed. But I mean, it just goes back to this point about how mad it is that, you know, my 13-year-old knows all about the difference between a nerve cell and a brain cell, but has no idea what the brain cell's actually doing or why it's important to talk to a baby, for instance. So that's the underlying objective, is really to just get early development into the sort of mainstream discourse of what education should really include. And we will have results which we'll very happy to share with you in the autumn.